Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Well, today we're going to finish off Psalm 95 by looking at verses 10 and 11. Now, 10 and 11 go with 7, 8, and 9, so you really have to read this whole piece together. It's a warning. You know, this psalm is a wonderful psalm of praise up to verse 7, and then in verse 7 we take a turn and we have now a warning or an exhortation not to be like those people that didn't trust God, that didn't believe. So we read yesterday verses 8 and 9. Today we're going to look at 9 and 10, and we're going to run over to Hebrews chapter 4 because there, again, the Hebrew evangelist uses this passage in his argument about rest. So let me read for us verses 10 and 11. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, and said, It is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. Unto whom I swear in my wrath, that they should not enter into my rest. So we have God swearing in his wrath that they should not enter into his rest. That takes us back to Numbers chapter 14, verses 28 and 29. But let's turn over now to Hebrews and just see how the Hebrew evangelist uses this passage in his argument in chapter 4. He begins chapter 4. Of course, chapter 4 begins at the, after 3. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. That's the last verse in Hebrews 3:19. And then we have chapter 4, Let us therefore fear, lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it, for unto us was the gospel preached. Now, he begins talking about the, believing and unbelieving and this idea of rest. Because there in verse 4 he says, For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works. And again, and in this place, again, if they shall enter into my rest. Seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not because of unbelief, again he limits a certain day, saying in David, Today. Now, here we have the end of verse 7 again. So you see how important that phrase at the end of verse 7 is. Again, he limits a certain day, saying in David, Today. And also notice that he mentions David. The 70 mentioned David, and of course, it's probably true that the writer here is referring to the Septuagint. Today, after so long a time, as it is said, Today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his works, as God did from his. Let us therefore labor to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. So we're resting in God. We're not trying to work our way into heaven. We're resting in his promise. We're not working because God rested on the day after he had made all things. So we now rest. And we rest in what? We rest in the works of Christ Jesus. So you see, he uses this again here in chapter 4 to, tell us about that rest that we have according to our belief. Are we believing what he has promised us? Because the people in Moses' day did not, even though they heard his voice. So we come back to the psalm. Today, if you will hear his voice, well, don't harden your heart, as in the provocation. Here's the exhortation. 40 years was I grieved. Now this is God speaking. And said, It is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways, unto whom I swear in my wrath that they should not enter into my rest. Why? Because of unbelief. This is our warning. This is our exhortation. Be careful. You hear his voice. Don't enter into unbelief. Don't allow it to harden your hearts. Psalm 95 is wonderful, isn't it? so many things: invitation, reason, example, warning, and exhortation to the believers. Well, join me next time and we'll take up Psalm 96 here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.